All right, we are going to do our first little lesson on Screencast-O-Matic to see how this works for you guys. But today we're going to learn about the circulatory system. And basically this teaches us how the blood moves throughout our body. What our learning objective is the body systems, and the the essential question that you're going to learn about is how does the body work? And the learning target is identifying the structure and function of the circulatory system. First, before we do anything, I would like you guys to think about what the circulatory system is and why it is important for our bodies. You can either discuss this with a person sitting next to you or on a sheet of paper, write down your answer and then turn it into me before you leave today. Here's a list of terms that you are going to use for this section. It's important that you learn all these terms because all of these terms will be used in our test at the end of this week. So make sure you know what all of them are. Some really important ones are arteries and veins. Make sure you understand the difference between those two. Understand the difference between the pulmonary artery and the pulmonary vein. Understand what valves do, and understand that the atrium and ventricles, they're two different places too. Make sure you know that as well. All right, so the difference between arteries and veins. Arteries carry blood away from the heart and veins carry blood to the heart. So A for arteries, it carries blood away, A for away. Veins carry blood to the heart. So you want to carry veins to the heart, arteries carry blood away from the heart. Arteries will always carry oxygenated blood except for one exception, and veins will always carry unoxygenated blood except for one exception as well. Pulmonary artery will carry unoxygenated blood, and the pulmonary vein will carry oxygenated blood. We'll talk about that a little further on, but those are four really important things to remember about the circulatory system. If you cannot remember those things, this whole heart system will get confusing for you. And so just make sure that you guys remember the difference between the two of those and then the exceptions to the two of those. There's four chambers in the heart. There's the right atrium, the right ventricle, the left atrium, and the left ventricle. So here we'll have a picture of the heart. If you notice when you're looking at the diagram, that what seems to be your left side is actually the right side, and what seems to be your right side is actually your right side. So it's really important that you remember whenever we look at diagrams of the body, it's like we're looking at a diagram of ourselves rather than looking at a screen. So it's a mirror of what it should look like in real life. Okay? So again, when you're drawing or writing, always remember that when you're drawing on the left side, you're really talking about the right side. And when you're drawing on the right side, you're really talking about the left side. Again, this is also confusing, so make sure you guys understand this. The right atrium is always on top and the right ventricle is always on the bottom. So A is on top, V is on the bottom. That goes for the left side as well. The A for the atrium is on top and the V for the ventricle is on the bottom. We're going to watch a little video here. This will really help to explain the flow and structure of the heart and how it works. It will help to better explain the pulmonary vein and the pulmonary artery. So watch this video quickly and make sure you're taking notes during this video. This is really, really important. This will help clear everything up for the confusion you might have at this point in time.
So what you're looking at is one of the most amazing organs in your body. This is the human heart, and it's shown with all of the vessels on it, and you can see the vessels coming into it and out of it. But the heart at its core is a pump, and this pump is why we call it the hardest working organ in our body, because it starts pumping blood from the point where you're a little fetus, maybe about 8 weeks old, all the way until the point where you die. And so this organ, I think it would be really cool to look at in a little bit more detail But it's hard to do that looking just at the outside. So what I did is I actually drew what it might look like on the inside. So let me actually just show you that now. And we'll follow the path of blood through the heart using this diagram. Let me start with a little picture in the corner. So let's say we have a person here, and this is their face, and this is their neck. I'm going to draw their arms, and they have in the middle of their chest their heart. And so the whole goal is to make sure that blood from all parts of their body, including their legs, can make its way back to the heart, first of all, and then get pumped back out to the body. So blood is going to come up from this arm, let's say, and dump into there, and the same on this side. And it's going to come from their head. And all three sources, the two arms and the head, are going to come together into one big vein. And that's going to be dumping into the top of the heart. And then separately, you've got veins from the legs meeting up with veins from the belly, coming into another opening into the heart. So that's how the blood gets back to the heart. And anytime I mention the word vein, I just want you to make sure you think of blood going towards the heart. Towards the heart. Now, if blood is going towards the heart, then after the blood is pumped by the heart, it's going to have to go out to the heart, right? It's going to have to go away from the heart. So that's the aorta. And the aorta actually has a little arch like that, and we call it the aortic arch. And it sends off one vessel to the arm, one vessel up this way, a vessel over this way, and then this arch kind of goes down, 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 and splits like that. So this is kind of a simplified version of it, but you can see how there are definitely some parallels between how the veins and the arteries are set up. And arteries, so anytime I mention the word artery, I want you to think of blood going away from the heart. And an easy way to remember that is that they both start with the letter A. So
You also see that he is writing in blue and red. Arteries carry blood away from the heart, which means it's oxygenated, so it's going to be red. And veins carry blood towards the heart, which means it's unoxygenated, so it will more than likely be blue. So keep that in mind as well.
going to our big diagram now, we can see that blood coming in this way and blood coming in this way is ending up at the same spot. It's going to end up at the, actually maybe I'll draw it here, is ending up at the right atrium. Right atrium. That's just the name of the chamber that the blood ends up in. And it came into the right atrium from a giant vessel up top called the superior vena cava. And this is a vein, of course, because it's bringing blood towards the heart. And down here, the inferior vena cava. Inferior vena cava. So these are the two directions that blood is going to be flowing. And once blood is in the right atrium, it's going to head down into the right ventricle. So this is the right ventricle, down here. This is the second chamber of the heart. And it gets there by passing through a valve. And this valve, and all valves in the heart, are basically there to keep blood moving in the right direction, so it doesn't go in the backwards direction. So this valve is called the tricuspid valve. Tricuspid valve. And it's called that because it's basically got three little flaps. That's why they call it tri. And I know you can only see two in my drawing, and that's just because my drawing is not perfect. And it's hard to show kind of a flap coming out at you, but you can imagine it. So blood goes into the right ventricle, and where does it go next? Well, after that, it's going to go this way. It's going to go into this vessel, and it's going to split. But before it goes there, it has to pass through another valve. So this is a valve right here called a pulmonary valve. Pulmonary valve. And it gives you a clue as to where things are going to go next, right? Because the word pulmonary means lungs. And so if this is my lung on this side, this is my left lung, and this is my right lung on this side, then these vessels, and I'll let you try to guess what they would be called, these vessels, this would be my, make sure I get my right and left straight, this is my left pulmonary artery, and I hesitated there just to make sure you got that because it's taking blood away from the heart, and this is my right pulmonary artery. So this is my right and left pulmonary artery. And so blood goes now into my lungs, right? These are the lungs that are kind of nestled into my thorax where my heart is sitting. Goes into my lungs. And remember, this blood is blue. Why is it blue? Well, it's blue because it doesn't have very much oxygen. And so one thing that I need to pick up is oxygen. And so that's one thing that the lungs are going to help me pick up, and I'm going to write O2 for oxygen. And
We will learn more about the lungs and their job in the circulatory system, but this is really important for the exchange of how it goes from a pulmonary artery to a pulmonary vein. So it's really important that you learn this piece, but we'll learn more about how this happens when we talk about the lungs and the respiratory system.
And it's also blue, and that reminds us that it's full of carbon dioxide. It's full of waste because it's coming from the body, right? And the body's made a lot of carbon dioxide that it's trying to get rid of. So in the lungs, you get rid of your carbon dioxide and you pick up oxygen. So that's why I switch at this point from a blue-colored vessel to a red-colored vessel. So now blood comes back in this way, and dumps into this chamber. So what is that? This is our left atrium. Our left atrium. So just like our right atrium, we have one on the left. And it goes down into, and you can probably guess what this one is called, it's our left ventricle. So just like before, where it went from the right atrium to the right ventricle, now we're going from the left atrium to the left ventricle. And it passes through a valve here, right? So this valve is called the mitral valve. Mitral valve. And its job is, of course, to make sure that blood does not go from the left ventricle back to the left atrium by accident. It wants to make sure that there's forward flow. And then the final valve, and I have to find a nice spot to write it, maybe right here, this final valve that it passes through is called the aortic valve. Aortic valve. And the aortic valve is going to be what divides the left ventricle from this giant vessel that we talked about earlier. And this is, of course, the aorta. This is my aorta. So now blood is going to go through the aorta to the rest of the body. So you can see how blood now flows from the body into the four chambers. First into the right atrium. This is chamber number 1. And then it goes into the right ventricle. This is chamber number 2. It goes to the lungs and then back out to the left atrium. So this is chamber number 3. And then the left ventricle. And this happens every moment of every day. Every time you hear your heart beating, this process is going on.
Now you've heard how this will work through how the circulatory system works through your heart and into your body. It's important to make sure you remember all the details that we stopped and talked about. I would replay this video over and over again a few times to make sure that you guys are understanding how the blood processes through your heart, and make sure you understand the difference between a pulmonary artery, a pulmonary vein, arteries and veins, and then make sure you guys also understand the labeling of the heart. We'll go over this in more detail, but for today, this should help you guys to understand what we're going to be talking about for the rest of the week. Let me know if you have any questions, and we'll move forward after this.